everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and welcome to Lookback, where I go back and take a look at videos, reviews that I've done 1, 5, and 10 years ago. Although this week, once again, there's nothing from 10 years ago. But the reviews I did a year and 5 years ago, what do I think about them now? So we'll start with last year. I looked at Bananagram's Party, which oddly enough, I never played Bananagrams up to this point, and I don't think I ever will again. I didn't like the Bananagrams game, but the party thing made it even worse, where you're just switching out tiles and stuff. I might get Bananagrams of 5 or 6, but the party was bleh. Blasting boxes, I really wanted to like this game where you're stacking boxes on top of each other and the heavier ones go on the bottom, but there just wasn't much of a game in it. Tooth Fairy game. This rating here is for kids. This game has a bunch of plastic teeth, which is funny. And with kids, they're very simple games. It works. For adults, I would pick something else. Mechanica. Oh, I wanted to like this game. With a board, like puzzle pieces that you put on a board and you run through machines, and then you move this dial around and the puzzle pieces will fall after a while. It looks so cool. Good art, good graphic design. But the game itself is just a little bit lacking. It's not a bad game, but it just should be better. Then Yukon Airways. This one was fun. It was about delivering mail or something like that, or passengers in the different spots of Yukon, and you've got to go farther. You're drafting dice, using dice to take actions. A solid game. Splurt, a party game. Silly party game, but it worked really well with my kids, where you just got to yell out a word that begins or ends with a certain letter that pops up. Very simple game in a small box, but we had fun with it. Rail Pass. I do wonder if this one will drop as time goes by. This is a really weird game that not everyone's going to like, where you are literally passing trains to each other, trying not to let them fall. It's a kind of a puzzly game where you have to figure out how to get stuff from one thing to another, a cooperative game, but you're literally passing trains around, physical plastic trains. Starlink is a good party game where you're connecting stars in the sky with a white marker, drawing a picture that people have to guess, like Pictionary, but you can only draw the picture by connecting stars. Really like this one. Fairy Trails is a 2-player Uwe Rosenberg game, which I thought was really neat. You're connecting all these paths and trying to form really long paths. It's a cool game to look at, but it's fairly light, but I enjoyed it. Zen Garden, another light game. This is from Queen Games. I call this their Spiel des Jahres bait, where they're trying to win that particular award. You're just putting tiles out in a garden, trying to meet several different scoring criteria. I found it to be fun. Metro X. The heights of solo gaming were happening last year. Metro X is one that you can play solo. Well, you can play with other people too, where you flip a card and you're slowly building out your subway trains based on the cards that are built. I found it to be a very good solitaire-style game. You can play with other people, but I liked it solo. And Monumental. I really enjoyed Monumental. Fantastic deck-building city game. It is bigger and grandiose. It might be slightly bigger than it needs to be, the actual game, but it is fun. I highly recommend this game. Also, I like the expansion a lot too. Adds more factions, more leaders. This Monumental is just a cool game. 5 years ago, I took a look at the Port of Piraeus. This is from Gaga Games. This game is just terrible. It's a terrible trading goods game. In fact, if you look on Board Game Geek, it's one of the lowest ranked games there. Kings of Mithril. I also hated this one. I hated several games from 5 years ago. This is about digging tunnels or building tunnels in, which is cool. There's a lot of games that do that. This one did it in the most slow, boring way possible. And bad production values on both those games. Blood and Fortune. This was a social deduction style game, but too complicated, just a really bad, messy game. The Shadow over Westminster. This one's not social deduction, but it's social deduction adjacent, where you're like these different behind-the-scenes secret things, and it's just not a very good game. A mysterious theme, but the game itself is really bad. Alan's Adventureland. This one I dropped a bit. I thought it was okay when I played it. It's an amusement park, but it's all about finances and stuff. Here's the thing: in the past 5 years, many games have come out about amusement parks and things like that, and this one just pales. The cover looks like a very different game. I really can't recommend it. Apple Pop, a little kids game with an actual physical tree where apples are on the tree for little kids. Aquileia, this is a game about Rome and has some interesting ideas. It looks really boring. And this is the kind of game that I would love to get more into, but when I look at it now, I go, meh, And I actually had to go back and watch my review to remember how the game worked. West of Africa, this one is a nice game. I was just shy of being approved back in the day, and part of that is that the game has kind of a very focused point to it. There's a little bit of history in the game, but not enough to get me to come back. On the opposite thing, I slightly popped up here Road to the White House. Now, this was not a game that came out 5 years ago. It came out many years ago. There's a lot of problems with Road to the White House, for sure. It's messy, it's lengthy, it has a few rules and things that I would reword to say something different. For example, you might have a candidate who is pro minorities, but you might have someone who's anti-minorities. Well, no one would ever say that, even if it's kind of where they're tilted. It was just some odd choice they made. But I still like to go back. It's a good example of how primaries work in the United States presidential election. Heroes. This is a okay game, duels with special abilities. Beyond Baker Street, a deduction style game. Histrio. This game, I still am not convinced that the cover and the animal theme matches, but there's some cool ideas in this game. Formula D. This was the reprinting of Formula Day that Asmodee did. And they added some street racing in with special abilities and stuff. Same as the original game. I like it. It's actually, this rating here, 7, is a drop down from, I think I probably gave it an 8.5 when I first played it. Formula D has kind of settled over the years, but I still think it's a fun racing game. And Carson City Big Box Edition. Oh, Carson City, a great Western worker placement game. I love it a lot. Definitely one that you should try if you get a chance. And the big box, this is a big box I didn't find to be as overwhelming as nowadays big box games. So those are the reviews that I did 1 and 5 years ago. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.